Millennial Godzilla! Yeet!
Everything about you. Everything about you.
Hello you dirty potters, how are you today? Today we're moving on to part 3 of our beginner's vase making series. We've already gone over how to make a cylinder vase, which is the most basic type of vase you need to progress into the other forms of the vases. And in the last video, I showed you guys how to make a nice shoulder to your vases, something that gives it a nice broad look. And so today, to complement that shoulder look, we're gonna go over how to taper down your vase into a nice foot. Making the shoulder of the vase isn't really all that hard, and in the last video, we went over a couple tips and tricks in order to show you how to make the nice shoulder of that vase. But where a vase really comes in is after you make the shoulder. See, this shoulder piece makes a piece look very broad, very robust. But it makes it look elegant once you taper down a foot. Making a nice tapered foot to a vase really isn't all that hard in order to get this nice elegant look. But you do have to remember, while you're throwing your form, either you're gonna make a nice V shape and start off from a small foot, or you're gonna make a very large shape and then taper that down with your wooden knife by cutting off the rest of the clay. Otherwise, you're gonna have to do that in the trim. Fixing your pots in the trim is for people who don't do it right the first time. And there are two main techniques that I know of in order to get this nice tapered foot or waist. And today, we're gonna go over both of them. But one of them's kind of a cheat code. First, let's center our clay. Potter tip. Just as previously mentioned in the last videos about vase making, it's a good idea to always make sure that this top portion is colored in nice and neat. Not only does it make it much easier on your next pull upwards, it also makes it much easier to form that shoulder or that small mouth if that's what you're going for. Now, do you see that this is tapered out a little bit in kind of a V shape? That's because I'm going to be making that classic Grecian M4 shape that I had mentioned before in the previous videos. Because of this, I'm going to keep this V shape here. I'm going to make that nice shoulder that we all know, and then I'm going to taper in the top. And that should make this part of the body of our vessel. But after that, we're going to be taking care of this. All I have to do from this point on to make those nice Grecian M4 shoulders that we all see on TV is to just color this part inwards very easily. Luckily for most beginners, when you pull, you're most likely going to be pulling in this V shape anyway. Pulling in a straight line is something of an intermediate technique, and it's very foreign to most beginners. Half the time, in order to control your good pulls, you're probably going to have to taper back in anyway. I'm just going to choke this in real quick, and it should naturally make that really nice shoulder vase look. I'm going to get my metal rib, and I'm going to pop this shoulder out just a tiny bit more, just to really accentuate it. We're gonna make some good shoulders here. Okay, good. We have a nice shoulder right here, and we have our nice colored in top. This way, if we ever wanna make a nice flange later on for a really beautiful vase, we can just pull this a little bit more and it'll come out naturally. Now we can worry about tapering in this bottom part. There's two main ways I know to taper this bottom part down here and make it look really elegant. The first way is to get your wooden knife and cut this skirt off. You see, even though I cut the skirt off, this still is a huge foot for something that's tapered down and meant to look nice and sexy and elegant. Sorry, I was thinking about something else. So what I've learned to do over time is I've learned to just widen this foot out a little bit more without cutting off any extra clay. This will make your vase a little bit bigger, and you will have to widen out the shoulders. This is something that you're going to want to plan out before you even start throwing this vase. And yes, this middle part's gonna get a little bit larger right here because you're essentially going to be expanding this middle section in order to make a nice straight V-taper line straight down to the edge of your foot here where you cut off the skirt in the first place. You can do that by wetting your hand, putting your hand back inside your cylinder, and pushing this middle portion right here outwards until it reaches a nice V taper with this bottom of the skirt or foot right here. You guys remember that trick that I showed you in the first video where you can essentially get your wooden knife and put it right up against your clay body, push your clay body up against the wooden knife, and it would automatically straighten out to the straightness of this wooden knife? Well, you can kind of do that here, except for instead of making it extremely straight, just put it like this instead. This will make sure that you get a nice straight V taper. And the extra neat thing is that you can just put this at the very bottom of where you cut that foot off and just keep pushing the clay body outwards, just like this. And just move all the way up the body.
Nice.
You didn't even really cut any access of the foot off. All you really did is make sure that this equals the width of this down here. You didn't have to do any work for cutting the extra part of this off, you just had to make it look nice and even. I like this technique because especially as a beginner, you're usually gonna have a little bit more clay than you actually need. And once you've already formed your shoulder and the head of your vase, you essentially are just pushing out the middle of the clay body to equal out with the very bottom of your clay body, or the foot as it would be. A lot of people don't like to do all that extra work to trim this clay body off, and this completely gets rid of that step. You don't have to trim off all the excess of that clay to make sure that the middle of your vase equals out to the bottom foot of your vase if you already make it look like what you wanted it to look like in the first place. Let's move on to the second technique. Let's say you want your vase to look really fine and really elegant. Not that this doesn't look fine as a beginner's vase, but let's say you want to make a super small foot and you want it to look really fancy. And let's also say that you've already done all the modifications to your pot that you need, and the hole's now so small that you can't fit your hand back inside. Okay, there, look, I made the hole super small so I can't fit my hand inside. You happy, people in the comments below? You already have your vase all set up. You don't want to mess with it anymore. You like the top, the hole's too small for you to fit your hand back into, the shoulder's just fine, you've already made all your separation lines. By all accounts, you are very happy with this vase, except for the one thing. You want it to taper down a little bit more to make it look a little bit more elegant. The second technique here is a little bit more difficult to pull off. It is kind of a high risk, high reward thing. What you're essentially doing is you're taking your wooden knife here and you're going to be cutting all the way from the middle of the body all the way down. It's very similar to cutting the skirt off of the bottom of your pot. The only difference is, instead of cutting the skirt solely off the bottom of your pot, you're going to be starting way up here. And you can essentially do this only 1 to 2 times if you're really good. And if you don't pull this technique off correctly, or you don't have a very steady hand, this whole pot will end up wobbling a little bit because you're going to be throwing it off from its center of balance. Please keep in mind that you do have to be a little bit better than normal at cutting the skirt off of your piece than normal. You can't just stick your knife down there like with a bowl and hope some of the clay comes off. You can't be doing all this and doing all this. You get lucky with this with a bowl, but with this technique, you're gonna have to do it the proper way. With this slanted part, touching the parts of the clay that you want off and slowly pushing pressure down as you tilt it this way. I know the camera's facing this way and you can't see me do it this way, so I repeat, you are going to be putting this edged part of your wooden knife up against the pot and moving downwards as it spins. And to boot, you're also going to be putting it a little bit deeper into the clay body. You're not just pushing down, you're pushing down and in. Make sure you take it very slowly. And once you reach the very bottom right here, and you can see all the way down to the wheel head past the clay body. See this right here? This part's dark, this part's clay, and this part's dark again. You want to see this all the way down. If you have a silver wheel head, of course it'll look silver, it won't look brown like mine is. Then you can slowly pull away. Make sure not to set off the center of gravity of your pot. Flip your wooden knife like this, and go ahead and shove it right underneath the clay you just separated. Be careful not to touch the actual vessel itself. This is in order to separate the clay body from the actual wheel head, so that way you can take it off very easily. Chop part of it off with that sharp part of your wooden knife again, and just move it away. This will make a nice neat ring. And now the bottom of your vase looks a little bit more elegant just because the foot's smaller. It gives that niceness to it. It gives that delicate look to it. And if you're really good, you can do this multiple times. But please make sure not to go all the way through the clay body. You shouldn't really have a problem with this because if you're a beginner and you're making these types of shapes, you most likely have a very thick body of clay. And that means you have plenty of clay to keep taking off with this technique. And because of that, you can essentially make the foot smaller and smaller and smaller until it keeps going to a fine point. I could probably do it one more time, actually. See, there you go, just did it again. Made the foot even smaller and made the vase look a little bit more elegant. Potter tip. At the end of this, you're most likely gonna have a little bit of a discrepancy or a look and unevenness in the middle of your clay body. You see this big bump right here? Most potters can tell that this is a strong sign of even clay versus uneven clay. And in order to make this go away, just go ahead and take your metal rib and go right over that edge. You're just gonna re-straighten your pot up one more time before you take it off the wheel. You see, now that looks much better. Now the clay body is blended in with itself. Now it looks like you actually meant to make it this evenness. You know, it's like when you eat too much food and you feel really self-conscious about your stomach, so you end up wearing a big sweatshirt and it's like 100 degrees outside, so everybody knows you're just self-conscious, trying to hide that big bump. Well, thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today. I really hope this series is helping you guys because the first one we started off in was just a cylinder, and the second one was essentially the shoulder, and this kind of comes naturally with that, and the third part is making that nice tapered down shape in order to make it a little bit more elegant. We're most likely going to concentrate on the head for our next video, but I really hope this helps set you guys up, and me breaking these videos into 3 or 4 different parts is really helping you absorb all the information you need in order to work on one part at a time. Well, thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today. If you'd like to see any of my actual artwork, the links are always down below for your beautiful Potter eyes to see in the description, and I will see you, Dirty Potters, next week. I love doing this. Wait, hold on.